kailanganan. Alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting. Sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiin. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bukaw, may nilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdiningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Please remain standing for our invocation.
Pauwi na sa tahanan mo, babalik na sa iyo. Tanggapin ating pupili, kapatid namin sa iyong
Please all take your seats. I'm gonna remove this. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julia Abad, former head of the Presidential Management Staff under President Noynoy Aquino, the only cabinet position with the rank of alipin. So, in keeping with that tradition, I will be your host this afternoon. We are today deeply honored to be welcomed by Father Roberto Bobby Yap, the 31st President of the Ateneo de Manila University, whose presence here makes this occasion even more meaningful. May we call on Father Bobby.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, good afternoon and welcome to Ateneo de Manila. Today is a significant day as we come together for the inaugural President Benigno Simeon Aquino III Memorial Lecture on Leadership and Democracy. This event is a testament to the enduring legacy of PNOY, and Ateneo de Manila is honored to partner with the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation for this crucial and thought-provoking initiative. It is, however, on a bittersweet note that we embark on this journey today on the 4th anniversary of PNOY's passing. PNOY left a remarkable legacy of leadership, service, and the conviction that protecting our nation's values and safety is a responsibility shared by all. Ang sa Pilipinas ay sa Pilipinas at kaya nating pumalag at ipagtanggol ang sarili tuwing may sisindak sa atin na sa loob mismo ng ating bakuran. That was PNOY speaking in the Philippine Navy anniversary in 2013. In January of the same year, the Philippine government initiated arbitral proceedings against the People's Republic of China concerning China's claim of sovereignty over the West Philippine Sea. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague ruled in favor of the Philippines, a decision many hailed as comparable to David's defeat of Goliath. Such was the courage and commitment of President Aquino. He was resolute and ready to fight for his beloved country. As a congressman, senator, and ultimately President of the Republic, Benigno Simeon Aquino III embodied his Jesuit education in his honesty, integrity, faith, and courage. His words and actions continue to inspire us, a beacon of hope and a reminder of the power of individual commitment for the collective good. The President Benigno Simeon Aquino III Memorial Lecture on Leadership and Democracy offers a perfect opportunity to honor Pinoy's memory, not just by reflecting on what he had accomplished and contributed, but also by casting our minds forward to where we would like to go as a nation. I would like to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude to ML Party List Representative Laila De Lima, who will deliver the inaugural lecture this afternoon. We look forward to her sharing her insights and wisdom. We also extend our warmest congratulations to her on her honorary doctorate, which was conferred on her last Friday during the Ateneo Higher Education Commencement Rites held at Blue Eagle Gym. Congratulations, Dr. De Lima, La Salista, now fellow Atenista. Today, as we celebrate the legacy of Pinoy gifted to us, we as Filipinos are encouraged to reflect on our commitment to our country. Let us continue to challenge ourselves to consider what more we can do and contribute to keep the wheels of democracy moving, to champion and strengthen good governance, and to ensure that present and future Filipino is worth living for, and if I might add, the Filipino is worth fighting for. Today, your presence here is not just a mark of respect for Pinoy, but also a testament to your commitment to the values he stood for. Maraming salamat. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Father Bobby. The PNOY Filipino book was first launched at the reopening of the Aquino Center and Museum in Tarlac City last February 24. And today, we are happy to present it to you here at the Ateneo. Spanning 200 pages of powerful images and thoughtfully written narratives, PNOY, the Filipino, traces the journey of President Benigno S. Aquino III from reluctant candidate to transformative leader who championed good governance, strengthened democracy, and led the Philippines to become the rising tiger of Asia. This commemorative book is more than a tribute. It is an invitation to remember, reflect, and be inspired. The Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation, publisher of the commemorative book Pinoy Filipino, is honored and grateful for the opportunity to share a copy with the Ateneo de Manila University, a place that helped to shape President Benigno S. Aquino III into the principled and servant leader he became. The Ateneo was more than President Aquino's alma mater. It was where many of his values, faith, excellence, and service to others were deepened and lived. May we again invite Father Bobby Yap, President of Ateneo de Manila University, and Mr. Francis Aquino D., Executive Director of the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation and nephew of President Aquino, to kindly join us here in front. Father Bobby, with deep respect and heartfelt remembrance, Kiko now turns over to you a copy of Pinoy Filipino, a tribute not only to the life and legacy of President Aquino, but also to the Atenean spirit that helped to guide his journey in service to the Filipino people.
totoong tao siya, hindi siya trapo, pero totoong tao na makatao. Hindi siya abusado at ayaw niya nangiistorbo ng kapwa. He would always respect your dignity, your professional dignity. Like even when we were good friends, he would not abuse his access to media. But I told him, as a president and as a son, I've always known you to be upright. But I never realized you're this upright when he became president. And then he said, "Kala mo madali, ha?"
Ako, si Pinoy yung mga una dyan. Pakakantahin niya na isa-isa. Lahat kailangan kumanta. Lahat na nandun na iwan, mga secretaries, kung sino pa man nandun dyan, obligado kang kumanta. Tapos yan, kakanta rin siya, mag-jutsa lang. Lagi may music.
Yun ang nakakamiss, yung pagpapatawa niya na talagang nakakatawa kasi minsan parang college boy yung humor niya eh. Diba? Tapos minsan gusto rin niyang parang baduy na baduy, ganon. I think, sad to say, power or not. Because, what I miss most about him are his values. The values we shared, that he and many Filipinos shared, the values of integrity and wanting to do good so that others would be better.
Pag nakita na rin yung libro nito at nabasa nila yung mga article doon, masasabi nila, ito pala si Pinoy. This time, it's about Pinoy. Mababasa ng tao sa history na ito pala si Pinoy.
It may seem it would bring Pinoy, the man, the president, the son of democracy to the people who didn't get the chance to know him that well. Parang kung hindi niyo siya nakilala ng matindi at malapitan nung buhay siya, ngayong wala na siya, pagkakataon na to para makilala siya kung sino talaga ang pagkatao niya.
Noong mga younger years ko, galit talaga ako sa mga politicians kasi tingin ko lang sila nagpapahirap sa bayan. Pero nung makita ko kay Pinoy, hindi na. Nabago yung paniniwala ko. Nakita ko talaga si Pinoy na straight talaga. Walang wang-wang. Totoo yun, wala siyang wang-wang. Tama lahat ang ginawa niya.
I think he would have been proud about the facts, about the record, the statistics of his governance. I think that's what he would stick to. Knowing him, he would always tell me, anecdotal na naman yan, anecdotal lang yan. He wanted facts. Hindi siya nambobola. At ayaw kasi niya binubola siya. He showed that even given Filipino values, democracy works. He made democracy work. And even if it was only 6 years, even if through so many crises, he was able to show, or the future generations would know, that Philippine constitutional democracy can work.
Kiko to come back here in front, as well as Ms. Thelma San Juan, the book's editor, and Tata Hill Nartea, if he's around, to please join us in front for the certificates of appreciation from the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation.
The Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation presents this certificate of appreciation to Ms. Thelma Sioson San Juan with deep gratitude for the talent, heart, and dedication you have poured into the creation of the commemorative book PNOY Filipino. The result is a touching and beautifully crafted remembrance of the life, leadership, and legacy of President Benigno S. Aquino III. Given this 24th day of June 2025 at the Escaler Hall of the Ateneo de Manila University, Loyola Heights, Quezon City. Signed, Francis Joseph Aquino D., Executive Director of the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation.
May we know if any of PNOY's former photographers are in the room? No. Maybe they will come later. As a leader, PNOY was remarkably mindful of the delineation between the presidency as an institution and his own persona as the individual who was given the duty and the privilege of occupying that office. It was his ability to acknowledge and respect this important distinction that served as his motivation to perform as president. It was a job he was given by an authority higher than himself, the Filipino people. Later on, this was also what enabled him to leave the office in peace, without any desire to cling to power or retain any of its trappings or vestiges. It was, after all, an honor vested in him by the people, and he respected their right to vest it later on in somebody else. As presidential staffers, we were expected to aim higher than merely fulfilling what was required. Hindi pwede ang pwede na, he would tell us. Kaya nyo na bang panindigan yan? Was another common question he would ask when preparing to accept the nth draft of a speech or a briefer or a set of talk points after it had gone through his painstaking revisions. Whoever put this here is doing all of us a disservice, he would say, when uncovering mistakes in calculation, typographical errors, or misused data. For PNOY, the presidency was a responsibility he took seriously, and he made sure that everyone else who served with him was reminded of this at every possible opportunity. It was not about disappointing or displeasing him, the person who occupied the office of the president. It was about honoring a sworn duty to bring the principle of magis to the presidency, an institution that deserved nothing less. Most leaders, especially those elected on waves of popularity like PNOY, have a tendency to be rock stars who crave the spotlight and constant recognition. President Aquino, on the other hand, was a team player. Whenever there was a problem to solve or a crisis to address, it was done collectively, as a team. Successes were never solely his. He would make it a point to recognize the work of everybody who had a contribution, big or small. As a leader, he knew that the whole would always be greater than the sum of our parts. In the wake of his unexpected passing, I had the privilege of reading tributes written by several young people who served with us during the presidency. PNOY did not think of himself as a mentor, but in the end, so many of us became his students in leadership and in public service, wrote Rafi Ignacio, who along with my former student Cedric Forbes, served as policy staffers and alternates to Attorney June Delantar, President Aquino's main body man, or jokingly, bag man. President Benigno S. Aquino III was a risk taker. Leadership was never about staying popular. It was about doing what was right. Inihalal tayo hindi para gawin ang madali, kung hindi para gawin ang tama, he used to say. It was this brand of courage that drew young people to him, the willingness to stake his entire being on personal principles made him an unwitting whisperer to the young and idealistic. More than this, in a traditional environment that places a premium on seniority and experience, PNOY put an extraordinary amount of faith in the young people who served in his administration. For President Aquino, anyone who was willing to do the work could have a role to play in his government. He pushed the young staffers in government at every turn, oftentimes making us feel that what we were being asked to do was beyond what was humanly possible. But at every opportunity, he reminded us why. It was because our work mattered. It was because we mattered. The reminder that we were contributing to something way beyond ourselves always lifted the limits to what we could do. The true measure of your success is your ability to train your successor, PNOY used to say. Benigno S. Aquino III was no scholar of leadership. Indeed, we who worked for him have no recollection of him lecturing us on the tenets of being a leader. And yet so much of his leadership style has shaped who we have become years later. It is now my pleasure to call on stage one of those erstwhile young people, still kinda young, a former PNOY baby, now holding her own as the chair of the Department of Fine Arts here at the Ateneo. Please welcome Smile Indias with Oliver Quintana.
Salamat po, Ms. Julia. Ako po si Smile, isa sa mga laging nauobligang kumanta. This one's for you, sir. Salamat po sa lahat ng ginawa niyo para sa pagmamahal. Kiss today goodbye, the sweetness and the sorrow. Wish me luck the same to you, but I can't regret what I did for love, what I did for look, my eyes are dry. The gift was ours to borrow. It's as if we always knew. And I won't forget what I did for love, what I did for what we'll remember. Kiss today goodbye and point me toward tomorrow. We did what we had to do. Won't forget, can't regret what I did. Love is as we travel on, love's what we'll remember. Kiss today goodbye and point me toward tomorrow. We did what we had to do. Won't forget, can't regret what I did for love. Won't forget, can't regret what I did for love. Miss you, sir.
Thank you, Smile. Walang kupas. Before we go on a quick break, may we call back on stage Kiko to be joined by the late Tata Hill. Mr. Hill Nartea, who took the photos for the PNOY book.
So the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation presents this certificate of appreciation to Tata Hill Nartea in heartfelt recognition of his inspired idea to create a commemorative book in honor of President Benigno S. Aquino III, an enduring way to remember him through the photographs captured in his 6-year term as president. From this meaningful suggestion, the book Pinoy Filipino was born, a beautiful tribute to the life, leadership, and legacy of President Benigno S. Aquino III, given on this 24th day of June 2025 at the Escaler Hall of the Ateneo de Manila University, Loyola Heights, Quezon City. Signed, Francis Joseph Aquino D., Executive Director of NCAF.
Thanks, Tata Hill. Thanks, Kiko. We now are going to have a quick 10-minute break. There are snacks in the foyer, but please try to keep yourself from bringing them into the hall. We will resume the program at 3:20. Thank you. We will restart the program in a few minutes. At this stage, we'd like to call back on stage Kiko Aquino D, Executive Director of the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation, to tell us a little bit about the memorial lecture.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, on behalf of the family and the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation, I'd like to thank the Ateneo community represented today by Father Bobby Yap and Dr. Benjamin Tolosa, Vice President for Mission Integration, for once again hosting us in honoring the memory of President Benigno S. Aquino III, or RT Tonoy. Thank you in particular to the School of Government, the Dr. Rosita G. Leong School of Social Sciences, and the School of Humanities represented today by Dr. Patricia Lambino for presenting this event with us. Our friend Maki Blanco had the initial idea to host a memorial lecture for Tito Noy in his alma mater. Sometimes the obvious really needs stating for us scholars ng bayan. From there, we had a lot of meetings with then ASOG Dean Randy Tuanyo, who has always been very enthusiastic about the project and who very smoothly turned us over to Dean Apple Oreta, who sealed the deal. Ever present was also Admiral Romel Ong, whom I would also personally like to thank for having, I have to say this correctly, absolutely no role, wink wink, in the recent Ateneo mission to the West Philippine Sea. We're also here in loving memory of Dean Dina Abad, as I understand it, ASOG's founding dean, survived by Sec Butch and Sec Julia. Sec Butch was Tito Noy's mentor, Sec Julia was Tito Noy's longtime chief of staff. Your joining us po today also makes this event so special. In line with ASOG's core value of ethical leadership, the President Benigno Simeon Aquino III Memorial Lecture on Leadership and Democracy aims to highlight decisions that he made as president. I don't think Tito Noy will mind if I invoke my sister. My sister's a card game player and now a game designer. And I learned from her that judging decisions based on their outcomes can be a mistake. If you make a move, if you play a card that wins the game 90% of the time, but you still lose the game because you're in that 10% situation despite the best of your knowledge and preparation, was that still the wrong decision to make? No. I think not. Conversely, Tito Noy's decision to pursue a case with the UN Permanent Court of Arbitration is now rightly remembered as a good decision, given the profound ruling in favor of the Philippines that came out in 2016. But there remains much to be learned by putting ourselves in his shoes and learning how he made that decision when the outcome was far from clear. We hope to do the same with many more of his key decisions in the years to come. Upon the request of many people here, we also just had a Manila launch for PNOY Filipino, our photo book that was published last February. Thank you again to our lead photographer, Tata Hil Nartea, and all the contributing photographers, our editor, Ma'am Thelma San Juan, not with us today, but here, art director, Neil Agonoy, researcher, Misha Magsanok, and the NCAF team for this labor of love. I'd also like to particularly thank Nico Dizon for whose tireless effort resulted in the book and what will be this annual tradition. If I'm being honest, I owe whatever increased profile NCAF might have right now to her ideas and work as well. And lastly, thank you very much to Commissioner, Secretary, Senator, and our Representative Laila De Lima for being with us today and with all of us every step of the way on the never-ending journey sa Daang Matuwid. We look forward very much to hearing your stories. Thank you all for being with us today, and again, good afternoon.
Thank you, Kiko. May we now call on Dr. Jennifer S. Oreta, Dean of the Ateneo School of Government, to introduce our main speaker.
Laila Magistrado de Lima was born and raised in Iriga City, Camarines Sur. She is the eldest daughter of the late COMELEC Commissioner Vicente de Lima and Norma Magistrado. She is the proud mother of Israel and Vincent Joshua, and grandmother to Brandon and Hannah. Attorney Laila completed her elementary and high school education at La Consolacion Academy, now La Consolacion College, graduating as class valedictorian. She earned her AB History Political Science degree from De La Salle University, also my alma mater, and finished her law degree at San Beda College, where she graduated as class salutatorian. She placed 8th in the 1985 bar examination. Attorney De Lima began her professional career as an election law practitioner and educator. She taught various law subjects at San Beda College and later served as lecturer in human rights law at the De La Salle University Tañada Diokno School of Law. In 2008, she was appointed chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights, and in 2010, she joined the cabinet of President Benigno S. Aquino III as secretary of the Department of Justice. And by the way, that's also the first time where I met Secretary De Lima then. In 2016, she was elected Senator of the Republic, where she served until 2022. Attorney De Lima is known for her principled advocacy for human rights, justice, and democratic reform. She was unjustly detained for nearly 7 years as a result of politically motivated, trumped-up charges by the former president, who is now standing trial at ICC, and who coincidentally is also invoking human rights and due process. In the last elections, she was elected as representative of ML Party List, bringing her voice and experience back to the halls of Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present to you one of the exemplary women that I really look up to, Congresswoman Laila De Lima.
Tapos na po yung campaign period. Maraming salamat po. Maraming salamat, Dr. Oreta. Nice to see you again. It's now, sa aking relo, it's 3:43. Binigyan po ako ng 40 minutes to deliver my talk. So, kung sakali man pong sumobra, pasensya na lang po kayo. Pero susubukan ko po to comply with the allotted time limit. Father Roberto Babiap, SJ, is he still here? Father, nice to see you again. Nung Biyernes lang po tayo nagkita. My dear colleagues in the PNOY cabinet, lalo akong kinakabahan na nandyan sila. The very dynamic executive director of the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation, Mr. Francis Kiko Aquino D. Ambassador Henry Bensurto and his team, I understand they're watching online from Turkey. He is our ambassador to Turkey, Henry Bensurto, who used to be with DFA. Dr. Benjamin Tolosa Jr., Dean of Ateneo School of Humanities. Dr. Patricia Lambino, Dean of the Ateneo School of Government. Dr. Jennifer Oreta, the Chair of the Interdisciplinary Studies School of Humanities. My niece, Dr. Nikki Carce Cruz. Other university officials, members of the academe, students, and other guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very pleasant good afternoon. I wish to thank the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation, the Ateneo School of Government, the Dr. Rosita Leong School of Social Sciences, and the Ateneo School of Humanities for giving me the honor of delivering the first ever President Benigno Simeon Aquino III Memorial Lecture on Leadership and Democracy. This inaugural lecture is on a topic that stands as one of the enduring legacies that continues to shape our nation's future. Today, we mark the 4th anniversary of President Aquino's passing. It still feels unreal to me, and I believe to many of us, that our beloved sir is gone. I was still in detention on the trumped-up charges filed against me by the Duterte administration when I received the sad news about the sudden demise in the morning of June 24, 2021, I broke into tears upon receiving a note from a staff bearing that said news. I could not believe then that Sir PNOY was gone. I didn't know he had illness kasi hindi naman po evident at all in those visits he made at the PNP Custodial Center. I noticed his loss of weight, but that's all. No indication of any illness. Obviously, I was not able to attend his wake to pay my final respects and to thank him for the trust he placed in me. First, when he appointed me as a Secretary of Justice, and again, when he asked me to run for the Senate under the administration slate in 2016. I was told that when President Aquino heard news of my impending arrest on February 24, 2017, he canceled his appointments on that fateful day, which coincided with an event or certain events related to the People Power anniversary celebration. I guess he must have been affected by the spectacle, if not the irony of it all, that Duterte's Malacanang was celebrating EDSA, while at the same time silencing an opposition critic. Behind the scenes, he worked quietly to check on the legality of my arrest. On the morning of February 24, 2017, he was among the last people I spoke to on the phone before I was arrested at the Senate premises and detained. Binisita niya ako several times while I was in detention, always without media coverage or fanfare. And each time, he would go through the regular process for visitation, getting clearance from the proper authorities of Camp Crame. He brought me books to read. Our conversations were moments that eased the burden of detention. We discussed both serious and light matters. We also had moments of levity. I wish all of you had experienced the President's sense of humor, yung sinasabi kanina ni Ms. Thelma. These small gestures spoke volumes about his kindness and empathy. Around that time, PNOY was already bothered with the way things were going under the Duterte administration. Whatever he felt then, he kept privately until he finally came out of his self-imposed seclusion from the public in November 2019 during the event that marked my 1,000th day in detention. He said then, quote, "Sa mga kasama, simple-simple lang ho pwede tayong magwalang kibo. Pwede nating hindi intindihin yung nangyayari sa kapiligiran natin. At hinahanda na natin yung pagkakataon na tamaan tayo. Tanong ho, habang hindi pa tayo tinamaan, hindi kaya mas marapat dito na tayo manindigan? Dito na tayo magsabing hindi tama ang nangyayari? Kaysa naman, di ba, maramdaman na natin ang nararamdaman ni Laila ng dire-diretso." That first public appearance, ever since he became Citizen PNOY, was also one of his last, as he was to leave us all behind less than 2 years later. Exactly a year ago today, June 24, I was cleared of all the charges leveled against me, giving me back my complete unmitigated freedom after 7 long years and allowing me to be with you today. Last May, the ML, or Mamamayang Liberal Party List, the sectoral arm of the Liberal Party, won a seat in Congress. It was nothing short of a miracle that we got 1 seat because we ranked very low in pre-election surveys. This 1 seat, which I now hold, allows me to represent the people once again and restore our fight for Daang Matuwid. I believe, I sense, I think that these 2 milestones in my life, my acquittal and our electoral victory, made PNOY happy, very happy, up there in heaven. And what better way to thank him, honor his memory, and preserve his legacy than through this memorial lecture. Today's lecture centers on the leadership of President Aquino, a principled leadership that we, his colleagues in government, witnessed firsthand as we worked alongside him to confront an issue of profound national significance, the West Philippine Sea. Except for a few points, I will not really be dwelling on the finer more substantive legal points of the issue, because I'm not an expert on the matter. I do not claim to be of any knowledge and expertise on this subject in a way near the level of expertise of other officials who worked on the WPS issue, such as retired Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio T. Carpio. We all know Justice Carpio as the foremost legal expert on WPS. My role here is to present how PNOY worked on this matter from my standpoint, my perspective, as his SOJ, regularly consulted on legal and constitutional issues. President Aquino took to heart the oath he swore on June 30, 2010, to faithfully and conscientiously fulfill his duties as President of the Philippines, to preserve and defend his Constitution, to execute his laws, to do justice to every man, and to consecrate himself to the service of the nation. For 6 years, he gave his all to uplift the lives of Filipinos, restore their dignity, and make them proud of their identity. No issue more clearly exemplifies this commitment than his resolute defense of the West Philippine Sea. China then had grown increasingly aggressive in its expansionist claims, invoking the so-called 9-dash line that covered nearly the entire South China Sea. The situation was fast becoming untenable. President Aquino committed himself to finding a principled and peaceful resolution to a decades-long maritime dispute. The maritime dispute between the Philippines and China has often been described as a David versus Goliath confrontation. What could a small nation like ours do to stand up to a powerful, resource-rich, and influential state? And yet, the president believed and constantly reminded us that might does not make right. For him, it was right that makes might. While the Aquino administration worked to upgrade our military capabilities and relied on the expertise of our gallant soldiers and strategic thinkers, we knew we could not confront China militarily. Instead, we pursued every possible diplomatic avenue. We strengthened alliances, championed the rule of international law, especially the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or the UNCLOS. We invoked the ASEAN-China Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, or the DOC, signed in 2002. However, as a legally non-binding agreement, it lacks enforceability. The DOC was intended to serve as a stepping stone toward a legally binding code of conduct for the South China Sea. Yet, more than 2 decades later, negotiations towards a final agreement remain slow. In the meantime, China's actions continue to undermine the principles set forth in the DOC. Nevertheless, we continue to engage China in political and diplomatic dialogues in the pursuit of a peaceful resolution, even if our efforts were often met with rejection. The day that things came to a head vis-a-vis China is marked in history as the Scarborough Shoal standoff of April 2022. I think we all remember that. The crisis started when the Philippine Navy accosted 8 Chinese fishing vessels caught violating Philippine fishery laws around the shoal. I remember during that time the tension was high in Malacanang. This was because the Philippine Navy ship, BRP Gregorio del Pilar, was confronted by 2 Chinese maritime surveillance vessels in order to block the arrest of the Chinese fishermen, the poachers. I remember being consulted then by the president if he would be violating any laws in case he authorized the release of the Chinese fishermen in exchange for Chinese withdrawal. This option was then the only way to prevent an escalation of the incident into a full-blown international crisis. I thus submitted a legal memorandum to the president, essentially stating that he can make a decision from a law enforcement point of view as chief executive or treat it as a national defense and security matter as the commander-in-chief. I said that if enforcing the law will result in the loss of life of Navy personnel and the start of a war with a superpower, the choice was obvious. There were other ways to skin a cat. Maybe firing broadsides on Chinese military vessels and Coast Guard ships was not exactly the brightest way to approach the problem. If not for the Scarborough Shoal standoff, I don't think the choice of challenging China before an international tribunal would have been ultimately considered and eventually undertaken. This served to be an important lesson in international conflicts, that the use of force can unwittingly unravel before the world the very illegitimacy of the claim for which China was only too willing to use force. In the final analysis, this is what the UNCLOS ruling in the case of Philippines versus China amounted to. It showed to the whole world the illegitimacy of China's claim, and that its use of force to defend such an illegitimate claim is a violation of international law, a clear violation. The Scarborough incident, I think, paved the way for the general strategy the Aquino administration was to take on the West Philippine Sea for the rest of its term. It became clear that our sovereign rights over the WPS were to be secured through peaceful means instead of armed confrontation. Confrontation and violence can only be resorted to when there are no other options left. This is why up to now, the Philippine government has adopted a maximum tolerance policy in the West Philippine Sea when it comes to confrontations with Chinese militia and Coast Guard vessels. We do not escalate. We protect and persevere. President Aquino was the nation's foremost diplomatic voice in asserting the Philippines' maritime rights on the global stage. At the ASEAN Summit in November 2012, when Cambodia, as the ASEAN chair, announced that all 10 member nations of the bloc agreed not to internationalize the maritime disputes, President Aquino did not hesitate to speak up and insisted that there was no such consensus made. Again, the consensus was not to internationalize. My colleague in the cabinet, the late Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario, at the time shared with the media the president's comments to his fellow leaders. I quote, "While the Philippines was for ASEAN unity, it has the inherent right to defend its national interests when deemed necessary," unquote. As we all know, the late Secretary Del Rosario was a key figure in the Philippine case. He was a quiet but hard worker. His mellow demeanor concealed the warrior within. His fighting fortitude and steady courage guided and supported President Noynoy all throughout, especially during those times when everything was still up in the air and there was no certainty as to where a legal challenge against China will bring the country. Going back to PNOY's protestations on Cambodia's declaration as ASEAN chair, media reports also mentioned that in a letter sent to all the ASEAN leaders following that meeting, the Philippine delegation emphasized that there was no consensus made on not internationalizing the South China Sea. Before this particular summit in September 2012, the president had signed Administrative Order number 29, officially naming as the West Philippine Sea the South China Sea waters within the country's 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, AO number 29. The maritime areas on the western side of the Philippines include the Luzon Sea, as well as the waters around, within and adjacent to the Kalayaan Island Group and Bajo de Masinloc, also known as Scarborough Shoal. On January 22, 2013, we know that the Philippines filed with the Permanent Court of Arbitration that case, where we challenged China's 9-dash line claim, which interferes with the Philippines' exercise of the sovereign rights and jurisdiction in the West Philippine Sea. I'd like to take this opportunity to point out, if not reiterate, the important distinction between a maritime dispute and a territorial dispute, and between sovereignty and sovereign rights. These were carefully considered when President Aquino made the decision that the Philippines will pursue legal action against China. Sovereignty refers to a state's jurisdiction or political authority over a defined territory. Sovereign rights, on the other hand, pertain to a state's entitlement to explore and exploit natural resources within its EEZ. A maritime dispute involves disagreements over maritime zones, such as the EEZ, while a territorial dispute concerns claims over land and questions of sovereignty. This distinction was to matter on the presentation of the Philippine case during the UNCLOS arbitration. The UNCLOS Arbitration Tribunal has no jurisdiction to decide territorial disputes. This means it cannot decide who among the claimant nations, like the Philippines, Vietnam, China, or Malaysia, has sovereignty over specific islands or land features that make up the Spratly Islands or the Kalayaan Island group. It can only decide on matters involving the provisions of the UNCLOS, specifically the claimant country's respective maritime entitlements or sovereign rights within their EEZs. This EEZ projects 200 nautical miles from a country's baselines. An island generates a 200-mile EEZ of its own. This is why it was important for the Philippine case to settle if its EEZ that encompasses the WPS is overlapped by China's EEZ by virtue of its claim that certain land features in the Spratly Islands are part of its land territory. If any of these land features claimed by China is an island, then it will necessarily overlap with the Philippines' EEZ. If it is not an island, that is, it is incapable of sustaining human habitations, then it can only generate a 12 nautical mile territorial sea and not a 200 nautical mile EEZ that will overlap with our own. This was the crux of the matter in the deliberations of PNOY's legal team on whether or not to gamble the issue of Ito Aba in the UNCLOS case against China. Being the largest land feature in the Spratly Islands, Ito Aba will generate a 200 nautical mile EEZ if it is declared an island, thus greatly diminishing the Philippines' sovereign rights over the WPS. However, if it is not declared an island, then we have a categorical ruling that the Philippines' EEZ in the WPS, as we know it, now remains undisturbed. It was a sort of an all-or-nothing gamble. Fortunately, we won the issue on Ito Aba. No country's EEZ, namely that of China and Vietnam, overlaps with our own in the WPS with regard to their mainland coastlines because of distance, and now this is also true with regard to their Spratly claims because of the Ito Aba ruling. But more on that later. As the administration's WPS legal team and our foreign counsel studied the case, it was determined that the strongest legal argument we could present before the tribunal was to seek a declaration of the respective maritime rights or the sovereign rights of the Philippines and China under the UNCLOS, to which both countries are signatories. We aim to establish that China's so-called 9-dash line, which encompasses nearly all of the South China Sea, has no basis under UNCLOS. The Philippines' filing of the arbitration case before the United Nations Arbitral Tribunal was our country's way of saying enough is enough. In an interview with the New York Times a year after we sought arbitration, President Aquino called on the world to support the Philippines in resisting China's assertive claims in the South China Sea, seeing how we will all be affected by China's aggression. Allow me to quote the president in that interview, quote, "If you say yes to something we believe is wrong now, what guarantee is there that the wrong will not be further exacerbated down the line?" End of quote. He added, and I quote, "At what point do you say enough is enough?" Well, the world has to say it. Remember that Sudetenland was given in an attempt to appease Hitler to prevent World War II. End of quote. The president was not afraid to make the comparison between what was happening in the South China Sea to what happened when the world failed to support Czechoslovakia after Hitler demanded for the annexation of Sudetenland to Germany. Just to clarify, I played more of a supporting role in the arbitration case. The lead responsibilities lay with the Solicitor General, the Executive Secretary, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel, whom I collectively refer to as the WPS team, and of course our foreign counsels, led by Mr. Paul Reichler. They made up the core of the Philippine delegation for the oral arguments before the Permanent Court of Arbitration at the Peace Palace in The Hague. From time to time, the President would invite me to their meetings and ask for my opinion. A few days before the submission of the Philippine Memorial, memorial is akin to memorandum, and if I recall correctly, it was just barely 3 days before the deadline for the submission of the memorial. Then Justice Antonio Carpio, who had served as a resource person for our case, requested a meeting with me. This moment was later recounted by veteran journalist Marites Dangilan Vitug in her book, Rock Solid. I hope everyone already read this book. The book, Rock Solid, is a definitive account on how President Aquino took the whole country on a journey of dealing with China on the WPS. As a testimonial on PNOY's work and his government's effort to defend what is ours, the storytelling is very engaging, and it almost reads like a suspense novel. I encourage, especially the students here with us today, to find a copy and read it. As I mentioned earlier, a stalemate had emerged within the WPS legal team over whether to include a discussion on Ito Aba in the memorial. It became one of the most contentious debates in the entire process, one that only the President could resolve. Let us review the facts that I have just previously mentioned. What is Ito Aba? It is the largest feature in the Spratly Islands in the South China Sea, which is being claimed by the Philippines, China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan. Taiwan, which calls it Taiping Island, has actually long controlled Ito Aba and has developed it by building an airstrip, an airport, a hospital, and other facilities. Justice Carpio explained to me in that meeting the importance, the crucial importance of including Ito Aba in our memorial. Under international law, rocks are entitled only to a 12 nautical mile territorial sea, while islands can generate a 200 nautical mile EEZ and a continental shelf. If Ito Aba were classified as an island, its 200 nautical mile EEZ would overlap with the coast of Palawan and the Reed Bank or Recto Bank, believed to be rich in oil and natural gas, making it very attractive to China. It was crucial to present to the court that our position was that Ito Aba is a rock, incapable of sustaining human habitation or economic life, even though Taiwan insists that it is an island. Prior to this, the filing of the case against China generated a flurry of activity among international experts and members of the academe. Some of them were engaged by China to develop its position, even when it refused to be a party to the case and submit its pleadings officially. Some of these China-sponsored experts criticized the Philippines' initial submissions, the pleadings filed before the memorial, for not including Ito Aba among the land features it intended to take up in the case. They said it was bad faith on the part of the Philippines to contest the island status of several land features without, however, including Ito Aba. After much study, the foreign legal team, and concurred in by Justice Carpio and SFA Del Rosario, arrived at the conclusion that excluding Ito Aba from the Philippine memorial will not sit well with the arbitral tribunal. So eventually, they decided it was necessary to include Ito Aba in its memorial. But there was opposition from within the Philippines WPS team on the inclusion of Ito Aba. Those who opposed its inclusion believed there was a risk that the tribunal will rule that Ito Aba is an island, thereby generating a 200-mile EEZ that will overlap with Palawan. They were certain that keeping quiet about it was better than risking it being ruled as an island by the tribunal. I was convinced by the argument of Justice Carpio, also of SFA del Rosario and the foreign legal team, that the issue of Ito Aba had to be raised in the Philippines Memorial. It was just a matter of presenting a case in which we had a high degree of confidence in winning. Remember, we were up against a giant, and we could not afford to be the underdog who lost. The next step was to bring the matter directly to the president. I share this story because, to me, it illustrates the president's decisiveness and courage under immense pressure. I was able to set a meeting with the president, kay Rochelle. Di ba, Rochelle? Tumawag ako sa'yo noon. So the very next day, pinapunta ako ni Rochelle. I waited for a couple of hours as he was attending an event outside Malacanang. When he returned and saw me, he said, "Lila, what is it? What's up?" And led me to his private office so we could speak. I explained the issue on Ito Aba briefly. He listened intently, and I remember how we tried to maintain a neutral expression. But you know, when the president wore that look, focused and withholding emotion, you knew he was absorbing the very weight of a serious situation. I later learned that after our meeting, the president spoke with SFA del Rosario. He then called for a meeting with the WPS team and me the next day. During that meeting, the Ito Aba issue was explained to him in greater detail. It became apparent that the president was deeply disappointed. He asked us why he had not been informed earlier of Ito Aba's importance to our case against China. On this issue, which could determine the success or failure of our arbitration case, the president made the decision to include Ito Aba in the memorial. We were fortunate to have a president who had the wisdom to grasp the complexities of the issue and make the right call. When the Philippines submitted its memorial to the Permanent Court of Arbitration on March 30, 2014, the 15 paragraphs on Ito Aba, as previously prepared by the law firm of Foley Hogg, were included and became part of the Philippine case. The oral presentation of the Philippine case before the UNCLOS Arbitral Tribunal took place on July 8, 2015. I clearly remember on that day, excitement was in the air. There was also tension and anxiety. For the most part, though, there was a feeling of hope in fighting for a just cause. For the Philippine contingent, it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Never before was the highest Philippine officialdom gathered in one place in a foreign country to go against a superpower. The first to speak for the Philippines on the first day of the oral arguments was Solicitor General Florin Hilbay. He introduced the case and presented the order of speakers for the Philippines. Solgen Hilbay was followed by DFA Secretary Del Rosario, who explained the reason for the Philippines' decision to seek arbitration in the maritime dispute with China. He also made an impassioned plea for the tribunal to recognize its jurisdiction because of the importance of the case, not only to the region, but to the entire world, and its impact on the application of the rule of law in maritime disputes. Third to speak was the Chief Counsel for the Philippines, Mr. Paul Reichler of the US-based Foley Hogg law firm. Reichler presented the justification for the tribunal's jurisdiction over the Philippine claims under UNCLOS. He was followed by other foreign legal experts who explained how the Philippine claims did not raise the questions of sovereignty over land or raise questions of maritime delimitation. Of course, President Aquino did not join us in The Hague. Well, he was not expected to join us. By that time, he already had confidence in his cause to bring the WPS issue to the Permanent Court of Arbitration. At the very least, he had confidence enough in the fact that he had made the right decision. Before we left for The Hague, his energy was palpable and could be felt by those of us around him. All of us knew that he was proud of the team that he put together to challenge one of the most powerful nations in the world by bringing China to court. That great moment in Philippine history is preserved in the iconic picture of the Philippine delegation taken before the grand staircase of the Peace Palace in The Hague. Nandyan rin po ako, sa gitna po ako. Ni Justice Carpio and Presidential Advisor on Political Affairs, Ronald Llamas. Nakita na kita, Ronald, nandiyan ka pala. 3 months later, in October 2015, the Philippines achieved its first victory in its case against China when the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruled affirmatively on the issue of jurisdiction. What followed after was the major battle of arguing that China's 9-dash line claim has no basis in international law and the UNCLOS. China, therefore, is not entitled to any portion of the Philippines' EEZ in the WPS. On July 12, 2016, a very triumphant day for us, the court ruled unanimously in favor of the Philippines, affirming the country's maritime entitlements under the UNCLOS and invalidating China's 9-dash line claim over the South China Sea. Ito Aba became one of the highlights of the ruling. The court declared that Ito Aba was a rock incapable of sustaining economic life or human community, our very argument in the memorial. As expected, the ruling was rejected by both China and Taiwan. We had successfully defended what is rightfully ours. As the president said, ang Pilipinas ay sa Pilipinas. Victory has many fathers, defeat is an orphan, as the saying goes. This was evident after we won the arbitration. Many were frequently mentioned in various forums and in the media for their roles and contributions to the initial victory. And yet, the significant actions of the very person who believed the Philippines was worth fighting for, who made the courageous decision to stand up to China, have not been so regularly mentioned. In fact, rarely mentioned. But humility has always been an Aquino trait. In his statement following the tribunal's decision, the president expressed his gratitude to all those who, and I quote, worked hard to defend our shared cause. He mentioned several names. Nandun din po yung pangalan ko. Today, I want to honor, recognize, and express our deepest gratitude to President Aquino for showing us that we can and must defend the Philippines. His honest and principled leadership, marked by a firm stand against corruption and a commitment to economic reform, earned the trust and respect of the international community. This credibility played a critical role as we sought the support of allied nations in asserting our rightful maritime claims. He also possessed the wisdom and clarity to navigate an immensely complex geopolitical landscape. And let us not forget his eloquence. President Aquino had a remarkable ability to articulate the Philippines' position clearly, confidently, and with moral authority before the world. He was a collaborative leader, though engaging with him could often be a formidable experience. Alam ito ng mga colleagues ko sa cabinet, he asked incisive, challenging questions that compelled those around him to be thoughtful, prepared, and precise, especially when it comes to figures, to data. Don't face him if you're not prepared with your data. He listened carefully, made difficult decisions, and stood by them with conviction. He championed a rules-based approach anchored in international law and remained steadfast in pursuing peaceful and legal means to assert our sovereign rights. Most of all, he had the courage to stand up to a global superpower, one that is militarily and economically far stronger. President Aquino willingly shouldered the burden and the responsibility of whatever consequences such a stance might bring. It was deeply painful to witness much of what he fought for nearly undone during the Duterte administration, which chose to set aside the arbitral ruling and implement a foreign policy that was in stark contrast to President Aquino's principled vision. but the Filipino people themselves have taken up the cause. No issue has galvanized Filipinos in recent decades more than the West Philippine Sea. When quite recently, a former congressman, now a newly elected senator, claimed that the WPS did not exist, he was swiftly rebuked by both experts and the broader public. Senator na daw. We now see ordinary citizens taking meaningful action. One brilliant example is the Ateneo coalition that has brought civilian presence right to the heart of the WPS, asserting our sovereign rights and amplifying the Filipino voice on the global stage. Without question, President Noynoy was able to unify the nation behind this cause. His enduring message was simple, yet powerful. Love your country with all your might, just as his father, our hero Ninoy Aquino, once told him when he was only 13 years old. Rest easy now, Mr. President, my president. Itutuloy namin ang laban. That ends my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Kong Laila. May we invite you, Kong Laila, to take your seat here for our panel discussion. And then I'd like to call on also the moderator for the discussion with Sec Laila. Dr. Nikki B. Carcy Cruz is the chair of the Interdisciplinary Studies Department of Ateneo School of Humanities. In her previous life, she was with the International Studies and Political Science departments at De La Salle University, where she taught international relations and team taught international law with former Commissioner on Human Rights, Chito Gascon. Thank you, Doc Nikki and Kong Laila.
So she asked, who are the panelists? Well, we're going to do something hybrid today for this discussion. It's not really a panel discussion. There's only two of us on the couch, but there's something in this room. It's collective memory of PNOY, and this is not just a memorial lecture by Rep-elect Laila de Lima, but there are also in our midst a lot of people have memories of him. I was wondering if we could try to divide the 30-minute or so discussion into three parts, something very familiar to all of us: the past, the present, the future. Maybe there are two microphones here. For the first round, I would invite people who have insights, but please be incisive like Pinoy and keep it short, because I know we're all overflowing with memories. And you can help me with that by pointing to some people who may have stories to tell, because they're members of the cabinet who've served under Pinoy. And let's really take the time to share those stories if we have them. But this is also a very relevant topic, because international law and our position in the international community of nations is a very relevant topic at a time like this. There are many questions we could ask, consequences. That was a risky move. Did we alienate our ASEAN neighbors? There's the story of the United States, or the story of the European Union, who has supported not just Pinoy or countries unilaterally supported our West Philippine Sea claim, but also supported you. You know, the European Union was very supportive, but yet as a bloc, they still have not yet signed security agreements the way they have with Korea. There's a lot at the present that we can talk about. I haven't even mentioned the United States. And the Aquino stance on that needs to be revisited. What does US-Philippine relations now mean? And the third is future related. You know, what's on the horizon? What does regionalism now mean? If we can't look to the ASEAN, are we looking at other middle rising powers? Is it Australia? Is it Japan? Is it New Zealand? Because we've just signed new things with them. What can we do? What does a Marcos administration have to do? Does it have a role to play in continuing an Aquino legacy? Galing talaga ng Filipino plot twist. Okay, so past, present, future, there are 2 microphones. I would like to invite members of the audience, and you can help me here. Do you want to point at someone who you feel has stories to share? And if not, I can probably just get the ball rolling. You think of your questions. But it would be good if some of you who have ideas can already stand by the microphone, so I could have a sense of how many people are going to talk. If there's too many of you, we'll listen to all of you and we'll aggregate the themes that we hear, so that we hear a lot of voices, and I'll just synthesize into thematic themes. Do you know anybody we're going to call to prepare?
Si Nikki, gusto ko sana makinig sa mga insights also of others, more of insights. And of course, rather than questions, but of course, if questions will be asked, we have to answer that. You asked me to point. Barry.
Sige. There's a microphone there. Kahit short lang, short.
Wala kayong pakawala.
Ma'am, magtatanong nga ako kasi ako una yung tinawag. I was actually considering whether I was going to ask it or not. But very decisive, obviously, yung lumabas na decision of the tribunal. Unfortunately, the decision came out during the next administration, which actually had a different, I suppose, policy it wanted to pursue, if you could call it a policy. A different position, I suppose. But let me get to the question. The other day, Vice President Sara Duterte broke her silence at long last on the West Philippine Sea issue.
First time ever
First time ever.
to comment.
Yes. By saying that our efforts to actually strengthen our military alliance, principally with the United States and other long-standing allies, as part and parcel of our efforts to protect our interests in the West Philippine Sea, as affirmed by the tribunal, is a violation of the constitutional policy on pursuing an independent foreign policy, because we are being used as a pawn between, in a greater game, supposedly between 2 superpowers. 2 questions, ma'am. First, what do you think about her comment? And 2, I will make an assumption on how you will answer the first question. Under Article 7 of the Articles of Impeachment filed before the Senate, there is a there is a blanket assertion that she has performed acts which are considered betrayals of public trust under Article 11 of the 1987 Constitution. Do you think these can be included in
Why
the
not?
course of the impeachment trial? You know, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, what do I think about her comment? How does she define independent foreign policy? And then again, one of her usual uninformed comments of the comments na simple lang ang tanong din dyan, ibabalik ko yung tanong, sino ba ang gumagawa ng mga aggressive actions? Sino yung may behavior sa West Philippine Sea sa kanilang mga harassment sa ating mga mangingisda, sa mga also acts of bullying sa ating mga Navy ships and also Coast Guard vessels? It's China, right? Is the US doing it? Now, and then, as we all observed, this is the first time that she ever commented. And that very comment, again, just reinforced our perception or impression of her as also aiding China, another traitor, just like the father. You know, those Halata naman. And then the Article 7, because it's encompassing enough, broad enough, general enough, that would really show not only her incompetence, her lack of moral fitness, and most importantly, betrayal of public trust. When you're supposed to be the second highest official of the land, you're not supposed to be, airing opinions or blurting out statements that would undermine the Philippines' core interests in the West Philippine Sea. And that's what she's been doing, undermining our position. When it was made clear, started by President Noy. And then, yun nga, nawala nung si Duterte na because yung pro-China foreign policy nila. And fortunately, this current administration is going by a similar route of relying on traditional allies. But as we can all see also, the China's aggressive acts, intrusions, are escalating. So the current administration, the current president, I hope would have the courage and the wisdom to make the right calls every time there is a sensitive situation at hand involving WPS. Tingnan natin kung kaya din yung kakayahan ni Pinoy, yung pag-iisip ni Pinoy, yung wisdom ni Pinoy. It remains to be seen. Thank you.
Does anybody else have a question? Okay. Can I ask a very Ateneo-phrased question?
Ateneo.
Yeah. How did he discern his tough decisions? That's no, because your storytelling was very clear and it was very exciting. But I want to probe a little bit more into his decision making, because those were very difficult, tough calls to make. They were very risky. It's a gamble. We could have lost. So of course he consulted and all that, but can you give us some insiders, recollections on his discernment process? Sorry, Ateneo question.
Kasi ano siya, yung the quiet courage, the stillness, pero the depth is there. And then you would know with the type of questions that would throw at us sa cabinet, lalo na sa cabinet meetings. Siguro you can share also Sec Butch and Julia and even si Rochelle. You know how the president thinks, you know how the president acts, and there is really this profound, quiet wisdom in him. You would know, of course, nasabi na natin na palabiro siya. He's easy to deal with, actually, on mundane matters. But when it comes to significant issues of national interest, you can expect seriousness in him. And then I think he would do a lot of reflection. Di ba madalas tumatahimik lang siya in his room? And then music. Rochelle just reminded me, music was his sanctuary. Yes, and that includes making decisions on crucial issues.
I hope people would share how he does this because, it's a society of spectacle. But because he's a man who did not make a spectacle out of himself, we don't have the kind of vlogs because there are other politicians who have a lot of content. They really share what they're thinking and you get an insider's view, of the behind the scenes. We don't have that as much. We're deprived of this insider's view. So who did you call?
Sec Butch.
Maybe you'd like to share for a bit.
Actually, a lot of the wisdom and the instinct, I think, must have come from, he and his family, they have such a profound, many times painful life experiences as they struggle to fight for what is right and what is the truth, starting, of course, with his father, who is our national martyr, and then his mother. Even he himself almost lost his life in some of those most difficult moments in our history. So I think that is so deeply, ingrained in his own thinking that, that from which he draws courage from making very difficult decisions. He's aware of the consequences. He's been through all the consequences. And sometimes when we talk about that, he said, these are not easy, but it helps to be able to have been able to go through that, not just once, not just twice, but I told him as a matter of your everyday life since you were a child. And I don't think any of us can really appreciate that except him. And I think, and that is why we're always surprised for such a, the West Philippine Sea issue is so complicated because it has technical, legal, constitutional, international law dimensions. I mean, who would be able to figure out, how to weave yourself through all of that complication? And yet, at the end of the day, sensing what is right, what is good for the country, I think comes from all of that. And, not many of us have the gift, have the experience that he and his family have been through. And I think that really makes him a special person, their family a special family. And in a way, knowing what they've gone through, you have confidence that if you entrust upon a leader a difficult decision such as what Laila has just presented in so simple a way that ordinary people can understand, I think that gift is rare among people today, and I think we should fully appreciate that and try as much as possible to learn from that, because it's really a source of such wisdom and grace for a leader like Pinoy.
Yeah. Okay, any questions? Okay, you can open the floor for questions on the present or future direction. Yes, please. Please approach the mic. And since there are two mics, anybody else who wants to ask can start lining up also.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Rosette Librea from the Social Sciences Development Studies. I feel so lucky to be part of this forum this afternoon because I've been hearing a lot about WPS, especially from former Chief Justice Carpio on TV. But it's very difficult to appreciate what really was the process. And it's only now when I heard about how our former chair of the CHR narrated how it was done by PNOY that I'm in the verge of crying also. You know why? You know why? Because many of us are deprived of this truth. And remember what you were saying, what is there to be done in the future? We have to do a lot in the future because we need somebody like former Chair Laila de Lima to be telling this story so that this can be properly disseminated to all the Filipinos, because we never can you hear from people that we appreciate whatever we have as far as WPS is concerned. And it's under the risk of being lost again because of the aggression of China. And we are now in the mercy of the US for us to be helped. and aided so that we can defend it again. But then we have these people, part of the cabinet and all that, with Chair Laila de Lima, part of it who can narrate these stories to all and create a movement for this so that we can propagate this as a movement, because this is the only way we can defend the WPS. I think that's the way. It's not through the aid of US or whatever, but creating a movement that will propagate this as the cause of the entire Filipinos. And that's the only justice that we can give to the contribution of PNOY. That's my only comment.
Well, as I mentioned in my talk, well, the issue of WPS is among those that really courts attention and courts interest and by the public in general. And I think initiatives such as, for example, a bill, I think I heard Representative-elect Chel Jokno said something about that one of the bills that they would be introducing would be to make the study of the WPS issues, South China Sea issues, as part of the curriculum. Ba? And definitely we in the ML party list would be supporting that and collaborating with them to push for that bill. I also intend to actually refile what I filed before when I was still in the Senate about declaring as a WPS day, the day that the arbitral tribunal ruled in our favor, July 12th, every year. But that was not touched at all in the Senate, so I intend also to file it so that we continue to raise awareness and let people understand. And I agree that this thing should really be explained in very simple terms. That's why I also struggled when we were drafting my presentation, because my sole aim was to really let the audience appreciate. Kasi nga yun ang mga inner stories, inside stories about how PNOY worked on this particular issue.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And that's why this memorial lecture is actually to be, Kiko, annual na to, ano? Will this be annual?
Yeah.
Because it's a memorial lecture series, supposedly. I just happened to deliver the inaugural lecture.
We're always wondering how quickly we forget, but if the storytellers don't do a good job of telling the stories, we can't wonder why we forget. Or I think it's also a case of bad timing, that this thing worth celebrating just happened to happen under Duterte's era. And because it happened at that time, you cannot rejoice and celebrate because the incumbent is not celebrating an achievement that he's not claiming nor agreeing with anyway. Yes, there is a question.
Yeah, thank you. Do I need to introduce? Do I need, okay, sorry. So, again, good afternoon to our speaker. My name is Hans Lijuliano from the Department of Political Science here in Ateneo. So, again, this question is less about President Aquino's actions and decisions, more the looking forward niya, no? So, right, I think I don't need to elaborate as much on how foreign affairs and international relations is very difficult to campaign for unless there's a human face to it, no? So, people didn't really care about the West Philippine Sea issue until we've heard the stories of our fisher folk who are directly affected by it, no? Now, why there are already organizations and movements at the forefront of this, like Ateneo, they're still primarily institutions, no? So, adding on to the question of how do we give ownership to this, to our people, parang, I like to pick your ideas lang po. Where do we need to start investing, organizing, and educating? And do you mind sharing what Mamamayang Liberal is already doing? As well as allied organizations siguro, if they're willing to share what's being done. Parang isin yung grassroots talaga.
We have lots of plans because ML happens to be, thank you for that question. Because ML happens to be a multi-sectoral party list, we represent several sectors, and we have actually identified already certain priority legislation for each of the sectors that we represent. And of course, because in ML, our battle cry during the campaign was Justicia at Reforma. Justicia is not just about criminal justice, sending the bad people to jail, investigating them and prosecuting them, but also social justice. Because social justice is the key, is the core principle that binds all of these sectors. Because these sectors have UDs and senior citizens. As a matter of fact, when we were campaigning, we were not just campaigning, we were actually holding sectoral dialogues with these groups because we wanted to hear from them exactly. Kasi nga, that's the very essence of party list. There's supposed to be a voice for the voiceless, for the powerless. Although we all know that the party list system has been abused, has been bastardized all these years. We hope to introduce actually reforms or amendments to the Party List System Act. And of course, on the issue of national sovereignty, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be collaborating with like-minded groups, with allied groups, the progressive groups in the Senate to pursue relevant and significant legislation to prop up the importance and to prop up the foreign policy directions of the administration. So thank you. I felt like campaigning again.
No, but I think that was
Kasi lagi ko pong sinasabi yun.
That's a very important question because the international is personal, and you reminded us that there are people who need to be protected. And you're right. You know, all my questions were mostly about treaties or institutions or regional.
Can I also volunteer someone? Kasi I think he can contribute dun sa how PNOY's mind works and how he would want his thoughts articulated. Can I call on one of the speechwriters of PNOY, Yol Yamendang?
Yol Yamendang is...
Professor Yol, tell us about your experience with PNOY, lalo na kapag meron kang rush na mga draft speeches.
Ma'am Nikki, I agree with Sec Butchabad. It wasn't discernment, it was muscle memory. For example, sa ASEAN, it's so easy to feel small. Kasi as in, literally, the people there are a head taller than us. Mga foreigners na matatangkad. Tapos, si Pinoy, patingin nga nung babasahin nating statement bukas. Kasi, ang understanding ko sa ASEAN, nag-usap na yung mga abogado, na-prepare na yung mga briefers. Tapos sa session, babasahin na lang yung mga statement. Agreed upon na yon, okay na yon. Tapos nung nakita ni Pino yung statement, sabi niya, malamya. Ayaw kong magbasa ng statement na malamya tungkol sa West Philippine Sea. So, pinarevise niya. Tinatawag niya si Sec Albert Del Rosario, sabi niya, ayaw ko to. Gusto ko ng stronger na statement. I-revise niyo to. So, sabi ni Sec Del Rosario, o sige, re-revise natin, bibili akong pizza. Bumili siya ng isang box ng pizza para sa aming 20 people na magre-revise nung speech. Buong magdamag namin nire-revise para kinabukasan, babasahin ni Pino. Nung binasa niya, nung morning bago niya i-present, natuwa na siya. Tapos nung naglalakad na kami, we didn't feel so small anymore. Parang kasama namin yung presidente na nagsalita tungkol sa West Philippine Sea nang hindi malamya. Ganon si Pinoy sa international scene kapag pinagtatanggol niya yung teritoryo natin.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, wait. Okay, maybe one last. Okay, yes, please.
Hello po. So, good afternoon. Badong Alonso from Atom August 21 Movement and Build Pilipinas. So, I'm helping with Justice Garcia sa Project Alon, which is alerts on West Philippine Sea. So, Alon, West Philippine Sea. We get to celebrate every July 12th yung victory. which is the date that we didn't choose. Well, we have January 22, which is a date that we chose and PNOY fought for. So is there any chance for the Mamayan Liberal to have this celebrated as well? And also to commemorate and let others know that we did fought for it and the Filipinos were fighting for. Thank you.
Let's sit down. Declaration of July 12 as the West Philippine Sea Day. It's actually important to always honor that day, and by doing so, we would always remember and honor President Noynoy himself. So if you have other ideas about whatever else na mga pwedeng gawin na mga occasions, activities to galvanize the interest of the Filipino public on the issue, then I can always consider that. So pumunta na lang yung grupo niyo sa office ko. Thank you.
So thank you for all the sharings of anecdotes, for all the insights, the questions, and for your invitation for people to continue the fight and the storytelling. Thank you. That wraps up our discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Doc Nikki. May we ask Kong Laila to stay up front for a little bit longer for the presentation of a plaque of appreciation from the Ateneo. And may I ask Dr. Benji Tolosa, Vice President for Mission Integration of the Ateneo de Manila University, to join Congresswoman De Lima up front with Mr. Kiko D for the plaque of appreciation.
Kong Laila, we present to you this plaque as a symbol of our gratitude. It reads, "This plaque of appreciation is gratefully presented to ML Party List Representative Laila De Lima in recognition for her contribution as the keynote speaker at the President Benigno Simeon Aquino III Memorial Lecture on Leadership and Democracy, held at the Escaler Hall of the Ateneo de Manila University, Loyola Heights, Quezon City, given this 24th day of June 2025 from the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation, the Ateneo School of Government, the Dr. Rosita G. Leong School of Social Sciences, and the School of Humanities.
Thank you, Kong Laila. May we ask Dr. Tolosa to stay on stage to receive the plaque of appreciation for the Ateneo de Manila University.
Now, the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation would like to present the Certificate of Appreciation with heartfelt gratitude to Father Bobby Yap of the Society of Jesus, represented by Dr. Benjamin Tolosa Jr., Vice President for Mission Integration of the Ateneo de Manila University, and the Ateneo community, in recognition of your support for our initiatives held in remembrance of President Benigno S. Aquino III. Throughout his years in public service, President Aquino drew strength and inspiration from the Atenean spirit, a life of faith, excellence, and service to others. May his life and legacy continue to inspire future generations as we work together to keep his story and values alive in the hearts of our people. Given this 24th day of June 2025 at the Escaler Hall of the Ateneo de Manila University, Loyola Heights, Quezon City, signed Francis Joseph Aquino D., Executive Director of the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation.
Thanks, Sir Benji. May we now ask Dr. Apple Oreta to join us on stage to receive the Certificate of Appreciation for the Ateneo School of Government.
Dean Apple, the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation would like to present the Ateneo School of Government with this certificate of appreciation that reads, the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation presents the certificate of appreciation to the Ateneo School of Government in grateful recognition of your invaluable support for the President Benigno S. Aquino III Memorial Lecture on Leadership and Democracy, and for graciously serving as its institutional home. We thank you for standing with us in our shared commitment to honor, celebrate, and preserve his enduring legacy, given this 24th day of June, 2025, at the Escaler Hall of the Ateneo de Manila University, Loyola Heights, Quezon City. Signed, Francis Joseph A.D., Executive Director, NCAF.
Thanks, Doc Apple. May we now ask Dean Patricia Lambino to receive the Certificate of Appreciation for the School of Humanities.
The Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation presents the Certificate of Appreciation to the School of Humanities in grateful recognition of your invaluable support for the President Benigno S. Aquino III Memorial Lecture on Leadership and Democracy, and for standing with us in our shared commitment to honor, celebrate, and preserve his enduring legacy.
Thank you, Dean Trish. Lastly, may we call Dr. Leslie Lopez, Chair of the Development Studies Program, to receive the Certificate of Appreciation for the Dr. Rosita G. Leong School of Social Sciences.
And we present the same citation to the Dr. Rosita G. Leong School of Social Sciences. A warm round of applause, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lopez. Now we'd like to call on Mr. Kiko D to formally close our program for today. Kiko.
So, hello again. If you're wondering why I'm speaking again, it's because I took myself out of the program when we launched the book in Tarlac last February. So, gumaganti sa akin yung staff ko. Right makes might is a phrase that inspired a lot of Tito Noy's advocacy on the West Philippine Sea. In a time when that belief seems more and more like a distant memory, I tried to find the origins of the phrase. Best I can tell, it was coined by Abraham Lincoln in an 1860 speech opposing the expansion of slavery in the United States as he sought the Republican nomination for the presidency. He ended with the following: "Let us be diverted by none of those sophistical contrivances wherewith we are so industriously plied and belabored, contrivances such as groping for some middle ground between the right and the wrong, vain as the search for a man who should be neither a living man nor a dead man, such as a policy of don't care on a question about which all true men do care, such as union appeals beseeching true union men to yield to disunionists, reversing the divine rule and calling not the sinners, but the righteous to repentance, such as invocations to Washington, imploring men to unsay what Washington said and undo what Washington did. Neither let us be slandered from our duty by false accusations against us, nor frightened from it by menaces of destruction to the government, nor of dungeons to ourselves. Let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us, to the end, dare to do our duty as we understand it. We live in a time when the world is ruled by leaders who believe that might makes right, and when more and more people can no longer tell the difference between the two. This is why Tito Noy's example is so important today. In the face of competitors and even allies around the world who offer no justification for their actions beyond the power they wield, there was a time when the Philippines stood firm, saying no, and the world listened. May what we've discussed today help us find our way back to being that country that Tito Noy lived, fought, and died for. Once more, thank you and good afternoon to all.
May we ask Kong Laila, Father Bobby, Miss Julia, all former cabinet secretaries and the staff of PNOY who are here to join us. May we call on Ma'am Thelma, Mr. Joey San Juan of House Printers, Tata Hill, for a picture, please. Thank you. May we please call on the following as well: Dr. Benjamin Tolosa Jr., Dr. Leslie Lopez, Dr. Patricia Lambino, and Dr. Jennifer Oreta, to please join us all on stage for a picture. And can we request for a selfie? So everyone who is here today, can we all please compress into the center part of the hall? Okay, so can everyone please compress into the center portion of the hall so that we can take a group picture of us all today. So once again, can we request everyone to please compress into the center portion of the hall for a group photo opportunity.